I was ordained in this church right here back in 2018 by the very generous folks who really helped me along as a baby minister. And I will leave it to you to decide if I've gotten any better at preaching in 8 years. But I'm so delighted to be here, and I say welcome. Bring your whole self here. Bring your heartbreaks. Bring your joys. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter who you love. It doesn't matter what's bringing you here. You are welcome here. We are all doing this together. And I want to share welcome opening words by Catherine McTeague, who's the former executive director of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. And she says, "We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Our presence here makes this moment holy. And so, let's worship together. Our opening hymn is number 245, Joy to the World. We could use some joy right now, right? Oh, did I skip the chalice? I skipped the chalice writing? Oh, I'm sorry. So out of practice. All right, so let's light the chalice together, reciting together the words that are in our bulletin. Are we ready? We are. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Thank you. Joy to the world, the joy has come. Let the earth receive her King. Every heart prepare a room, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, now gladness reigns. Let hearts their songs employ. Fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Joy to the Lord, let sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. Righteousness His glory show, as far as love is found, as far as love is found, as far as love is found. This morning I want to share a reading. It's not a responsive reading, but I thought it was apropos for the sermon in the moment. And it's a piece called Sweet Darkness by the Irish poet David Whyte. Sweet Darkness by David Whyte. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There, you can be sure that you are not beyond love. The dark will be your home tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn. Anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sweet Darkness by David White. As I said, we bring many things to this service, things on our hearts, things that delighted us, things that make us proud, things that anger us or sadden us. And so we take a moment now to share them with each other by honoring our joys and sorrows. So I invite folks to come up as you're moved and share what's on your heart.
Well, my grandfather was the oldest of 7, and a week or 2 ago, his youngest brother, Don, passed away, died. He never married, never had kids. He was just like a humble servant. He was a Catholic his whole life, and he worked at Union Carbide or something like that. And then he lived at, I think, Spalino Towers, right here on 10th. Never drove. When he used to walk to the hospital and volunteer there, and he used to, go visit people on buses all around and visit people he knew in nursing homes and this and that. And he was just, he was older, and he would still walk to the hospital and push people in wheelchairs, and even though he should have kind of been in one himself, but he was just a good guy. And then in the past couple of years, I never knew him that well or that closely. And then my aunt started taking care of him when his health started going down, and she was still working, so me and Emerson would pick him up and take him to appointments. Me and Emerson would take him. He loved eating, so we'd go to Buzzies. He loved Buzzies, and he loved ice cream, so we'd go take him out to, what's that one really good ice cream place right by your house? Dee Dee's. He loved Dee Dee's. He would get the large, and he would eat the Dee Dee's, and he just liked eating, so Emerson and I would take him and hang out, and he was almost 80, and he went to a nursing home a couple years ago, and he didn't like visitors that much, so we'd visit, we'd stay for like 5 minutes, and he'd be like, okay, have a good day, because I think he was ashamed or something, I don't know, but he just didn't like visitors there. But he never lost his mind. He'd ask about Emerson, ask about Abby, and he was just a good human being. So this is for
over here. Oh, I'm sorry, you can do that too, yeah. Thanks so much.
Good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I wanted to thank Patty for involving me in a presentation that was performed at Niagara Falls Public Library. And I know Patty put a lot of work and effort into the presentation. It reminded me of J.R.R. Tolkien's novels with fairies and elves and dragons. And she had these 2 huge dragons that she had made, complete with the dragon head. And I was able to be the dragon head for 2 different dragons. And there were a number of other volunteers who assisted, and there were 3 others who were the body and the tail of the dragon. So it was just a phenomenal activity, and gave me an opportunity to intermingle with other citizens of Niagara Falls and to do something constructive with our time. And everyone there enjoyed it, loved it. So thank you very much, Patty, for involving me in that. It was an opportunity I'll never forget.
Oh, yes. If I ever get a harebrained idea like this again, just shoot me.
Well done.
I've been working on it since April with a broken wrist.
Yeah, I also wanted to let you know that when I came back from Toronto Thursday, Eric's nephew gave me 3 boxes of pastries. And one of them I brought with me today. I hope the individuals responsible for that nice spread downstairs don't mind the addition of the apple divine. So I think you'll enjoy it. I guess that's about it. Anybody else?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
This will be really quick. I promised Reverend Ron, how does he refer to himself? The slightly used holy man, that I would tell him, I would tell everybody that he is okay from his surgery. And how do I say this nicely? I think it's tomorrow or Tuesday. He won't have to go around with his extra little doodle bag.
Good morning. My name is Meg. I'm glad to meet you. Like several years ago when my brother-in-law was alive, he said that, Meg, I will always be your safety net. And that was really, really, I took that to heart. And recently I was in a 12-step meeting and I brought up a topic and I couldn't, in those fellowships, they do not form opinions on outside issues. That was particularly important during the World War II, I guess. But I had to speak because my politics, I was just so angry about something. I don't watch the news on the regular, but when I do, every time I do, I get very angry. And I said, this is affecting my serenity, But then I realized, I get a spiritual safety net is, yes, the 12-step programs, but I have you guys too. I have Unitarian Fellowship and the Quaker Fellowship. Because of being a Unitarian, it's changed the way that I've approached life. That I can get nourishment from different places, and then and as I talked in my gratitude sermon, need to give it back for full circle, and that has happened for me, and or I'm practicing that, I should say, but I always get that feeling I'm just not doing enough. I'm handicapped, so it's a little difficult for me to get to the No King's Day, but I've really wanted to go. But then I did some, thinking of myself, did some self-inventory after seeing Nuremberg, which I highly recommend. Russell Crowe and Michael Shannon were outstanding. But I'm half German, so it reminded me, am I going to be the last one, standing up saying, no, I'm not going to be. And I am doing things, I am taking people to pantries and doing things online and telephone banking and things like that. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for having the support of the Unitarian Church and people like yourself. Thank you.
Well, I'll do Kathy and then you after that. No, go ahead. Oh, yeah, you'll be next.
I just had to light a candle of joy to have Bob with us again. Many of you may not know him, but he was visiting our church regularly to share these wonderful sermons. And then his ordination was here, and we were thrilled to have his ordination here. And I am so happy that you decided to come back home, so to speak, and I'm delighted you're here this morning. And so I just wanted to light a candle of joy.
Oh, well, I guess, yep. I guess mine's sort of like in between a joy and sorrow. I'm not even sure what to call it. But as you know, I've been taking care of my parents. I drive down Southern Tier every single week. It's a 2-hour drive for my parents. And I'm going down there tomorrow morning so my stepmother can get her bone density shot. There's a name for it. But then Wednesday, I'll be with them 2 nights because Wednesday afternoon at 3:15, my dad New York State's making my dad take his road test over again. He's going to be 91 years old, and he got pulled over by the police for going too slow, weaving on the road, and just between me and everyone here, be honest, I think maybe my dad should give up his license. But since he won't listen to family, I'm going to let New York State do that. He's had trouble with parallel parking, so I've been trying to help him out with that. But he keeps forgetting stuff and your turn signal and all that. And so I'll just kind of let God or the Creator in New York State take care of this coming Wednesday. So if he loses his license, then it'll be a little bit more dependent on me. But the good news is my sister is stepping up to the plate finally, because I told her I cannot drive down to Wellsville if they run out of milk or something just to take them to 7-Eleven. I told her it's not going to happen. You live 5 minutes away from Dad. You're going to have to do it. He'd be 91, January 16th.
Okay.
The last one was kind of sorrow. This one is a joy. It's beautiful out, isn't it? Like this big, fluffy white snow. Like Emerson was so excited because he knows I love this snow. So he saw it first and he came, Mom, it's the snow you love. It's the snow you love. And like just driving here, like it's Niagara Falls. It's Niagara Falls. And it was all covered in white and it was beautiful. And like I'm just walking in and doing it. Like it's just joy. Joy is just springs. It's beautiful.
Truly.
After this, we're driving to Cheektowaga to go to like a trampoline park. So
All right.
I don't know how it's snowing out there, but it'll be a lot of snow.
Anybody else want to speak, share? Okay, so I'll light one more candle to those joys and sorrows that are held in our hearts, that are unspoken but no less keenly felt. And we ask for blessings on all these joys and sorrows and all the folks that we're thinking of right now. Okay, it's time to take up the offertory for the work of this church and the work of this church in the community. of light, come to me, come to me. About 15 years ago, my friend Marta, her house burnt down in Boston, Massachusetts. And this was Christmas Eve. And the fire happened at night while she and her mother and her teenage daughter were sleeping. The smoke alarms worked, thank heavens, but they barely had time to grab their coats and just get everyone outside. And they watched in shock as everything they owned went up in smoke. And I asked Marta what she wished folks understood about her situation after the fire. And she talked about how incredibly damaging it can be to one's mental health. She talked about how overwhelming it is to deal with insurance companies. And it was so hard for her to help her daughter deal with the loss while coping with her own feelings at the same time. Everything was upended. And since then, the holidays have always been mixed for her. I mean, she has many happy memories, of course, but also a lingering trauma. Mostly, she thinks about how lucky it is that her whole family got out safely, and she's so grateful for that. But above all, she feels more vulnerable now that she's learned how quickly and easily a life can be destabilized. A disaster is a moment when irresistible destructive forces hit us in ways that cannot be controlled. Those forces may have been out there all along, like a storm out in the middle of the ocean, but they only become a disaster when they hammer our vulnerable lives. It's this mismatch between the storm's force and our puny protection that causes the disaster. The fact is, we are always walking around vulnerable. We are always a disaster waiting to happen. One April morning in 1906, a middle-aged woman named Ann Holzhauser was shaken out of bed by an earthquake in San Francisco. Her house was destroyed, so she salvaged what she could and walked with thousands of other people to Golden Gate Park. After three days there, she stitched together blankets and rugs and created a tent that housed 22 people, including 13 children. Starting with just one pie plate and one tin cup, she began cooking meals for others. Other survivors gave her money, and she walked to Oakland to buy cooking utensils. Eventually, she was serving hundreds of meals a day, and her friends put up a sign naming the soup kitchen the Palace Hotel. And the actual Palace Hotel in San Francisco had been burnt down. And she wasn't alone. All over that shattered city, average people set aside the old order of individualism and competition and, to put it simply, took care of each other. On the other hand, the established authorities in San Francisco did not behave so well. Eventually, there were over 17,000 soldiers patrolling the city, seeing mobs of looters where they were just folks trying to find food to feed their families. The notorious shoot-to-kill order was given, and as a consequence, people acting to help each other were sometimes murdered by the so-called keepers of the peace. The fear by the establishment was not that people would starve, but that the old order would be upended, and that people would take their fates into their own hands. And that might include taking back what is rightfully theirs from the class that was exploiting them. So remember that 1906 was near the end of what was called the Gilded Age. And this was a time when technological advancements caused an economic boom, but that economic boom served only a very small slice of the population. Immigrants were treated horribly, and corruption was so common that it was called the era of good stealings. Does any of this sound familiar? So all of this and much more is described in the wonderful book by Rebecca Solnit called A Paradise Built in Hell. extraordinary communities that arise in disaster. So in the conventional belief is that in an emergency, regular folks are somehow transformed into irrational, angry mobs. They're dangerous. In this book, Solnit describes the amazing ways in which the opposite is true. Whether in New York City during 9/11, or in the Halifax, Nova Scotia explosion in 1917, or Mexico City earthquake in 1985, or Katrina in New Orleans in 2005, when there was a crisis, people stepped outside their normal social circles to care for each other, to look out for each other. Naomi Klein wrote a book called Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. And the basic thesis of the book is that there is a pattern of corporations taking advantage of a cataclysmic event to seize control of markets. And a good example of that would be the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Following the storm and the flooding, the public schools and public hospitals ceased to exist, and they were replaced by for-profit entities that extract money from the community and are much less accountable. So the New Orleans public schools were shut down entirely, and they started again with a system of charter schools. Sometimes an obvious disaster is followed by a quiet disaster. So for 3 months at the end of 2017, when I was in fact preaching here often, for 3 months I spent my days on the phone in the Small Business Administration Disaster Loan Customer Service Center. So I don't know if folks realize this, but the National Customer Service Center for all these disaster loans is right here in Buffalo, New York, of all places. It's on South Elmwood, pretty close to Niagara Square, in a nondescript building. But to refresh your memory, in 2017, there was Hurricane Harvey in Texas, and Hurricane Irma in Florida, and then worst of all, Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the surrounding islands. Then there were the California wildfires. That was like the first of them, really. I think Rosewood was the first one, and then there were a lot more. But a dozen people died, and thousands of homes were destroyed in those wildfires. I'd never worked in a call center before. Have anybody here ever worked in a call center? Just out of curiosity? You have known suffering. So it was an amazing experience for me, the call center. So this one down on Elmwood is a huge room. It's got 150 cubicles, and everyone is working in teams. Everyone's wearing headsets with the microphones, like we're the McDonald's clerk or something. The thing that is amazing, though, is the level of scrutiny. So everything is driven by metrics. Giant signs hang from the ceiling telling how many callers were waiting on hold, and it was often like thousands, and how long they've been waiting, and it was often hours. And when I started out in September, the average I think was 4 hours, but terrible, terrible. So in my cubicle on my phone, there were 5 main buttons. So it was call in, which put me in the queue to receive calls from the outside. So when this button was pushed, after I hang up, I have 50 seconds to update the database before the next call would ring on my line. And then if I need to, I can push the button marked after call, which puts my phone in pause while I finish updating the database from the last call. But I had to be careful not to push that button too much, or I'd hear about it from my supervisor. Then there's a meeting button, which I would push for meetings with my team. There's an admin button when I needed to go talk to my supervisor or get something off the printer or the like. And then there's a break button, which is for me time. So during my 9-hour workday, I would get 30 minutes for lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. And if I went over that 15 minutes, when I got back to my cube, my boss would be waiting there. So through these buttons, my boss monitored every second of my day. Every day, my teammates and I got a spreadsheet of our previous day's time spent in each category with our rankings. I was always comfortably in the middle. And if I spent too much time in admin or after call, I would have to go have a conversation with my boss. And the monitoring didn't end there. The boss listened in on our calls. I want to say, this guy, Tim, he was actually a nice guy, but he was trapped in the system that forced him to do these, I thought, pretty awful things. But he would listen in on our calls, and he'd even send a text message to my desktop, my computer screen, in the middle of a call saying, hey, tell this caller this or that. And that was really unnerving when that first started to happen. Like this thing would pop up and like, oh God, there's somebody else listening. I hope I didn't swear. So call centers are about control. The managers are presented with the ability to monitor the behavior of their employees in a way that no other industry can. And what can be measured becomes what is important. And what can't be measured is disregarded or at least diminished. So one thing you can't put a number on is stress. So I was never called into meetings with my boss to talk about my stress level. So the hard thing from the get-go was the juxtaposition of this sterile clinical management style with the heartbreak that I was hearing over the phone. So I would talk to them on the phone about their loan, and they would tell me about the destruction of their business, and they would weep. And women would cry into the phone while I could hear a child fussing in their lap. And as I listened with my heart breaking, I'd be watching the call timer on the phone, knowing that if I went over the call center goal of 6.5 minutes, I was going to hear about it. So those calls, it was a tiny dose of moral injury where I felt like I was participating in a system that was hurting people, doing things that are fundamentally not right. Moral injury. And during that time, I also learned a bit about how we as a country think about poverty. So after the initial assistance to keep people safe and sanitary during the storms, that would be like hotel vouchers, like vouchers for food and groceries, sanitary items. After the initial assistance, the federal government has two kinds of recovery assistance. For the very poor, and by very poor, I mean elderly or disabled with no prospects for employment, there were outright grants to help rebuild people's homes. For everyone else, there's a very low interest loan, usually like a 1% loan, but that loan had to be paid back. So several times I had the conversation with folks where I explained how the outright grants were for the desperately poor, and that the loans were for the people who had the means to pay them back. And I remember one woman saying to me, so I get punishment for having my act together while some jackass gets a free ride. I bit my tongue. I almost bit my tongue off because there's just no compassion for folks who are disabled or elderly. And this confirmed for me that the real disaster is our economy, how we do capitalism. The thousands of conversations I had with folks trying to rebuild their lives that confirmed to me that the fires and the floods and the windstorms just topple people who are already teetering. I talked to so many folks who before the disasters had constructed safety nets that were made out of spider webs, who were just barely hanging on month to month, hanging on by the generation of their friends or family or neighbors. And I'm talking to people in that situation now all the time, right here. The system is simply not working. Or rather, the system is working for the 10% and nobody else. So people who work full-time should be able to afford housing, should have security in disaster. In the meantime, I was speaking to a man who was living in a car with his kids after the hurricane. That ain't right. So yes, a call center is about control, but disasters remind us that control is an illusion. I don't know this for sure, but I bet that almost everyone in this sanctuary has had at one point or another the rug pulled out from under them, or more to the point, met that irresistible destructive force that hits us in ways that can't be controlled. This lack of control was part of living. And perhaps this knowledge of our vulnerability is what drives us to go to such great lengths to create a sense of control, an illusion of control. So we can't prevent disasters, but we can prepare. And it's funny, because of where I worked, I had all these government disaster preparations pamphlets lying around, and they were heavy on advice like having the right gear ahead of time, which is surely a good idea, like have a week's worth of food that won't perish, have extra batteries for your flashlights, keep some cash around the house. But they never say a word about looking out for your neighbors or asking for their help. And so let's remember what Rebecca Solness reminded us in her book. In disasters, people mostly respond by being amazing to each other. So our best preparation, the closest thing to being in control, is having good neighbors. And to have good neighbors, we do that by being good neighbors. So that's a plan ahead thing too. Before we need to ask our neighbor if we can plug our phone chargers into their generator, hopefully we've been a good neighbor to them in large and small ways that being a good neighbor means. My friend Marta saw that after her home burnt down on Christmas Eve, up to then she'd been a tireless advocate for the Latina community in Boston. So when the disaster hit, her community, the community she served, rushed to support her and her family. She didn't know it until the day after the fire, but she had been preparing for disaster all along. And that begs the question, how are we, each of us, preparing for disasters that we can't anticipate? What kind of safety nets are we creating where we interact with our neighbors and with strangers? I'd love to pray that disaster never touches any of us, but I think that's the wrong prayer. So I pray instead that we live and love with full awareness that a disaster is always a possibility, and that instead of making us clutch for the illusion of greater control, that this awareness brings us into greater communion with each other. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Our closing hymn is number 251, Silent Night. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds pray at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar, heavenly hosts sing hallelujah, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, child of God, loves her white, radiant beams from thy holy face, in broad redeeming grace, sleep in heavenly Do we have any announcements? No announcements? If you think of an announcement, you can yell it out during coffee hour. So let's extinguish our chalice using the words. Thanks for helping out. Using our words on our cover. Here we go. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The weather outside's delightful, and the fire inside The fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. But as long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.